to put myself in. All right, Ronnie, how you doing?
Hey, Keck, how you doing?
I'm very well, thank you.
Hey, good to see you again, pal.
And
here,
you?
Here we are again for our next Mind and Body Pump Videocast.
I know.
With a very special guest. I'm looking forward to this. You?
Yeah, definitely. Rosie, I've followed for a long time and followed us, from the beginning. So it's really exciting for me to be able to get this opportunity to speak to her. So yeah.
Brilliant. Well, as you know, we're here to talk to the IFBB Olympian professional bodybuilder, Rosanna Harte. Let's hear you. Come on, Rosanna.
Oh, there she is.
Hello, guys.
Hello.
Hello. It's good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you. How you doing?
I'm really good. Really good. I've had quite a relaxing day today, so
good.
Feeling good. Ready to chat to you guys.
Well, listen, this is what it's all about. We're going to ask you a load of questions, and it's all about us listening to what you've got to say. But listen, for the people who don't know who you are and where you come from, I want to spend a little bit of time on your background and when you got into bodybuilding, etc. I understand that you got into bodybuilding in 2004, but you didn't really compete until 2007. So you had 3 years of getting yourself into the frame of mind of wanting to compete. So just talk it through your first show and the lead up to that, please, Rosie.
Yeah. So it was the last year of my university degree where I was studying dance and theatre.
Oh.
And my tutor told me to build up a little bit of body strength for my dancing. And at the same time, I met my ex-husband, Jamie, and he kind of got me into bodybuilding. So we just trained together. Like, I really loved it. I got strong very quickly because I'd done dancing since I was 3. My body, like my muscles were kind of there. They were ready to kind of very good core. And I had super strong tendons and ligaments as well. Like, I was really strong for my size, even though I didn't have the muscle yet. So you could say I just came into it very naturally.
Yeah.
So I kind of really enjoyed the attention. Like, if I'm honest, at that point in my life, I really enjoyed feeling strong, getting attention in the gym. I enjoyed the way that people were shocked by how much I could lift for my size, because if anybody's met me in real life, I'm absolutely tiny. Yeah. I'm like 5 foot and I'm really petite.
Right.
So it was fun. And me and my partner Jamie, we were like a little tag team. It was really bonding for us. We trained together every day. We just absolutely loved it. And then I got a little bit of encouragement by different people at the gyms that I was going to, and Jamie was like my biggest fan always, so he was encouraging me really to go and compete. So I did my first show at the MPA. I think it was the Heart of England or something. And that was in 2007, and I won that, which I guess kind of just gave me the bug. I'm sure I would have carried on anyway, even if I hadn't have won it. But of course, you win your first show and it's just oh my God.
Did that shock you, or and come as a surprise? Did you expect to win, or did you just say, well, I'm just going to go and see how I do? Or were you really one of these people who said, no, I want to win it?
I really wanted to win right from the start. I was really competitive. Bodybuilding kind of sparked it, ignited a fire inside me that I'd not felt with anything else before. It kind of ignited this aggression and competitiveness, which obviously, if you take it to the extreme, can be quite unhealthy for you. But at that time, it was just the most kind of exciting, thrilling and consuming feeling. So I was there to win, and I thought I would win. I was super confident and probably a little bit cocky as well. But I was kind of ready to win the first show.
I know the journey you went on then took you to NABA, and you competed there for a couple of years, and you won a British trained figure title in 2010. And then obviously you moved over to the UK BFF. I'm moving on to the really to the point where I wanted to talk about your track into professional bodybuilding, standing on the stage at the Olympia, etc., which is obviously unreal, really, in a very, very short space of time. So you competed a couple of years at the NABBA, and then obviously you moved over to the UK BFF into what I understand bodybuilding then.
I did, and it's kind of funny, like looking back at it all, some of the most exciting times were probably when I was with NABBA, because it was all so like fresh. And again, it was this teamwork thing between me and my ex-partner. It was this like this bonding experience that was so exciting, and it was all about like leading towards that goal. So I have some really fond memories of the whole NABBA time, and then went over to UK BFF, which was actually the original goal right from the start. So even in 2007, my first ever show, which I weighed less than 6 stone for, I said, I want to be a bodybuilder and I want to stand on the Olympia stage. I'm going to be a pro. That's what I said when I was like, however, 24 or whatever.
So when you stood on stage in 2007, you were 6 stone. How much weight did you lose to get on stage, or did you just tone it all?
I probably weighed like something similar to what I would have been before, but I gained muscle and lost a little bit of body fat. So like I've always been very, very tiny, like a tiny person. So yeah, I kind of gained a little bit of muscle and fat, and then stripped the body fat down. So I was probably like about 6 stone before I even did anything.
Different compensation, different body.
Yeah, exactly. The composition was different. Yeah. So I just had this like crazy kind of dream that I wanted to be this big bodybuilder, and I used to really love the freaky bodybuilders as well. So the whole plan was to get to the UK BFF eventually when I felt like I could, because I always wanted to win. I didn't want to do the thing where you compete and work your way up. I wanted to be like in the right category for the body that I was then to win it. So when I felt like I had won everything in trained figure with NABBA, I knew it was time to move.
Because there was nowhere to go then, was there? There was no actual bodybuilding then at that point, was there?
No.
So it's only been introduced recently, the last probably 3 or 4 years. So you basically came to the end of the path with NABBA.
Exactly.
Obviously, you won British titles there, and you achieved everything, and then moved to the UK BFF, which was bodybuilding, which was your next step.
Yeah, so I went into the bodybuilding, and I think it was like within a couple of years I had won the British title in bodybuilding. And actually that was one of the questions was, what did I feel like? I think either at the Olympia or when I won my pro card.
Yeah, that was a question from Sarah Parker. How did you said when you won the pro card? How did you feel? That's one of the questions we've had in actually, and it's a very good question.
Yeah, so I won the pro card in 2015, and this was in women's physique because they got rid of female bodybuilding. So I had to kind of change over. But actually 2 of the most incredible competitions for me was the year that I won the British as a bodybuilder, because it was something that not many people, I think, thought that I would be able to do because I was so small. But I just had this kind of, I was really digging my heels in, and I knew I could do it. So that felt kind of incredible. And then the second most kind of monumental feeling was when I won my pro card. And it felt incredible. It's probably the only show that I've actually cried at. Maybe I think I cried when I won my first pro show as well. But yeah, it felt like allowing me to get to the next step, because I knew that I was deserving of pro status. I knew that once I got that, it would give me another boost of enthusiasm. And I knew that would kind of like take me to where I felt like I knew I could get to, but just needed that bit of faith in me, I guess.
So on the pro card, was the objective to be the best, or were you money motivated as well, and were you title driven? Which was it? You just wanted to make sure that you shone as being the best bodybuilder that could possibly walk the earth and walk away with everything?
Yeah, it was all about being the best bodybuilder. I was absolutely useless with money. Useless. Like, I never thought about it. I couldn't even, I had like real, I guess it's like self-worth issues, even though you're like super confident in a lot of ways. I used to find it hard to like ask for money and funny things like that around money. So I was never money driven, never like that. I just wanted to be the best bodybuilder, and it was kind of like proving, there was this big drive to kind of prove that I was as good as what I thought I could be. So it just used to feel so great to kind of get that mirrored back to you and win these shows.
And if there was any money there, you'll pick it up, and you pick the trophy up, and then you go on. Okay, so
yeah,
listen, let's go to 2012, 2013. You went to the Arnold, and you placed it at that show, didn't you?
Yeah, so I did the Arnolds. I did Arnolds as a bodybuilder and got third, I think.
Yeah.
And then I did the Arnolds again as a women's physique, and I got second.
Yeah.
And then when I finally got the pro card, I did my first pro show in Dallas, and I won that one with straight firsts. And that was incredible, because I purposefully picked a show that was not easy. I didn't go for one of the European quieter ones. I went straight over to America at Dallas and just thought, well, let's see how I stand up against the other pros.
I would imagine that those classes are stacked with girls as well, isn't it? I mean, it's not you turning up there and there's 2 or 3 on stage. I would imagine.
No, there's usually about like 25, 30 at these big shows. Yeah.
Let me just stop you there then. So when you got there and you saw yourself compared to everybody else, what was the difference between you and everybody else? Because, you know, anybody who knows anything about you, as myself and Matt does, knows that you're 100% committed. You're driven by wanting to be the best. You get there, you look at everybody else. What's your state of mind like? What are you looking at? Are you comparing yourself? Are you not bothered? Are you just focused on yourself? Where's your mind at this point?
It's very funny, because like all the things that you would tell people not to do, I always used to do. I was like terrible. So I used to always compare myself to others. And that was like one of the biggest things that used to, even though now looking back, I can see that it was from a maybe not the most healthiest place. Like seeking externally for validation and trying to achieve things to get my self-worth. But I used to compare myself to everyone. I used to, as soon as I got backstage, I used to think that everyone else looked better than me. My cortisol used to go crazy. If you saw me backstage, literally as soon as I got back there, I used to go really flat and watery because of my cortisol, because I used to just go into stress like fight or flight, because I was so panicked looking around. All these big girls, like all of their delts were like stacked. Everyone was so big compared to me. And it used to only ever be that once I got on stage, I would start to calm down, because I was just enjoying the flow of posing. I love being on stage. So I used to calm down and then start to fill out. And for me, I guess the thing that always stood out for me was my proportions, my tiny waist, my femininity, the way that I displayed my physique with my grace and my posing. I knew my angles because of my years of dancing.
Yeah.
So for me, it was all about the proportions. And when I posed, everything would spread and pop. So you'd get these big girls backstage that were like super jacked. When they got on stage, they would still be super jacked, but there wouldn't be nothing flaring or popping. Their waist might be thick.
Factor.
Yeah. So quite often there was never really anyone There was no one with my the symmetry and the beauty factor. So you would kind of catch the judge's eye because it's beautiful, and it looks like a sculpture.
Let me take you back to what you said there about you know, the anxiety that you got, the way that you got yourself all worked up, looking at everybody else. Was that because of the pressure of the competition, or was it your mindset of you thought you weren't good enough to compete, you're not on the same level, and you doubted yourself, and that got the anxiety up? Or was it the competition of seeing everybody else on stage as well? Which way did it work? Because it's an interesting scenario for people who are listening in tonight about a state of mind and getting yourself in the right. I mean, we talk a lot about having a proper mental approach to this, and it's all in the mind, as well as the training, the eating, and the sleeping, and all that sort of stuff. So
it's kind of funny because
there's a lot of information there that you can give out.
I guess this is where we start to look at the kind of like deeper layers, the subconscious mind and the conscious mind, and the way that our subconscious mind can sometimes, and the subconscious programming that we have, can sometimes have beliefs of I am not good enough, I can't do it, and then our consciously we feel we do deserve it and we feel we can do it. That's like our conscious kind of empowered version of ourselves. But like 95% of our time we're in our subconscious programs, and 75% of those are limiting and faulty. So what can happen is you can get someone like me that on the surface is very driven, achieving, successful, but quite frequently that is a coping mechanism that you've created so that you don't have to face the deeper core beliefs that you're unworthy and you're not good enough. So when I would get into a competition environment, I hadn't dealt with those deep wounds. I hadn't dealt with those faulty subconscious programs. So they kick in. So all of a sudden I've got all these like, you know, the inner critic coming in. You've got these voices tapping you on the shoulder, you crap, like that. So it's like you've got these two parts of you, and if you don't do the mental conditioning and you don't do the work for those subconscious limiting beliefs, they can kick in.
I think it's a wonderful explanation, and I think there'll be lots of girls and guys out there who will go, yeah, I reflect what she's just said about that. But I'm wondering how much of that in the stage that you were talking about actually leads you eventually to falling out of love with bodybuilding into what you're doing now. So it was already there, wasn't it? It was already happening, but you probably didn't realize that at the time.
I really didn't. I think like for me, bodybuilding brought me so much. Like I'm just starting now. I think it's like over 2 years since I stopped, and I'm just now starting to integrate that whole experience fully in a fair, loving way, in a way that I'm kind of remembering all the incredible things that it brought me to. But bodybuilding also, as well as bringing me so much, it was, now I know and I can look back, it was actually a big distraction for me. Like my subconscious, again, I wasn't ready to face some of the kind of deeper core beliefs or the deeper kind of childhood traumas and things like this. So bodybuilding was like this way of keeping busy. It was very much, it gave me an identity that felt very strong and secure, and I received lots of attention and validation. But quite often when you have a lower self-esteem, we seek these things externally because there's actually like a bit of a void, like there's an emptiness where our real self-worth, like our self-worth about who we are, regardless of how we look, regardless of how much money we've got, regardless of the partner that we have. So bodybuilding in a lot of ways, and I know this in hindsight, I didn't know then, was a way of kind of keeping busy and distracted from maybe some of the things that I wasn't ready to deal with. And then what happens is there's only so long you can go against this inner kind of voice. So for a long time, bodybuilding for me was flow. It was passion. It was like, I enjoyed it. It was incredible. I had so many really great experiences traveling, meeting lots of people. I gained discipline. I learned about my body. I learned about nutrition, health, hormones, gut health, all these incredible things that I wouldn't have learned without it. But then it became forced. And I think it was just breaking point for me, because actually my health started to suffer. Things like my gut function was really poor. And this is when I had taken it to such an extreme that I was putting so much weight on external validation to make me feel good, that it had to end.
So you're at this point basically in your bodybuilding career. You've had you've had your pro card. Your 2016 was your first pro show. You won that. You had a couple of other shows at the Olympia, finishing in the top 10. Couple of shows after that, but this must have all been resonating in your mind, where you started basically to change your view on bodybuilding. You started to not to enjoy it. You felt disillusioned. You lost your love for it all, didn't you? And at that point, you suddenly, in 2018, walk away from it and you disappear.
Yeah.
Obviously, was that part of the plan for you to heal, to get to the point where you said, okay, it was a part of my life which was great, and for all the reasons you said before, you were looking for all the adulation, but inside you had this burning hole that you were talking about, that really all the issues you've just talked about. So you walked away in 2018 to completely change. So before we move on to what you're doing now, have you stopped training completely? Do you not go to the gym now, or would you encourage people to go to the gym? What's your view sitting there now as an ex bodybuilder, before we talk about the next step for you?
Yeah, so I had to go through a journey of kind of letting it all go. So I didn't train at all for probably about a year. Wow. Not with weights anyway. Yeah, I was just, because before I did bodybuilding, I was a dancer. So I started to reconnect to some of the things that were authentic parts of me as well. Moving my body to feel good, moving my body to express myself, not doing things from a place of having to look a certain way. So I just got to the point where I felt so much pressure, external and internal, to look a certain way all the time. And it just drove me mad. I was just like, I can't be bothered with this anymore. There's more to life than dieting. There's more to life than, it just always felt like I was restricted towards the end. So I guess I had to have like a pendulum swing all the way to the other side, where it went from being so rigid for so many years, like 15 years of bodybuilding. So I was always either on a diet or bulking. Also, like a lot of the people on Instagram will know that throughout this, I had a 10-year binge eating problem.
Wow. Connected
to some of these deeper wounds that I wasn't ready to look at. Also connected to the bodybuilding lifestyle, restricting your calories, not eating enough. You're actually like malnourished part of the way through the prep. So no wonder you want to like binge and gorge on a load of food. So I went through this big kind of, call it a spiritual awakening or whatever you want to call it. So I went all the way to the other side, where I took away all of the rules. I took away all of the structure. I took away all of the restrictions and the rigidity about food, about the way I looked, and about the way I would move my body and the intentions behind it. So I took it all the way to just intuition.
Yeah.
So it started to be listening to my body signals day to day. What do I want to do today? How do I feel today? Do I want to go for a walk? Okay, I'll do that. Do I just want to lie on the floor and meditate? Okay, I'm just going to do that. Do I want to fast all day? Yes. Do I want to eat chocolate all day? Yes. So I went through this kind of reprogramming as well, like my neural pathways around, you know, like these different like dieting concepts, like good food, bad food, healthy, unhealthy, diet, junk or whatever. So I had to like reframe all of that and retrain my brain around food. So I spent like this year just really listening. And actually now, probably the last 6 months, I've just got back to the point with exercise where I've started lifting weights again.
Oh, no.
Yeah, and I'm really enjoying it. And actually what I've realized is I feel better when I lift weights. Yeah. So everything that I do now is around how do I feel? How am I functioning?
It's on your terms, isn't it? I think as opposed to being driven by the regimental competing, dieting, training, it's on your terms.
Yeah.
When you had your last competition, did you actually know then that was going to be your last competition? You're going to say, I am now going to walk away from this because I really need to stop doing what I'm doing and change the way I'm going. Did you not know?
No.
Well,
I didn't know. Go on.
There's actually someone asked a question which is kind of similar to what Ronnie's kind of leading to. So if we just bring that up, and it's from Sarah Oldham, and she's asking, she lives in Fuerteventura, and she's asking what was the definitive moment that actually made you realize that you didn't want to do bodybuilding anymore?
Yeah.
Good question, Sarah. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah.
I'm going with it. At any point, did you know while you were competing? It's like a professional footballer comes to the end of he knows this is his last game and I've got to go do something else. Did you know this was your last competition, or did you do the competition and then have a period of time where you didn't compete and you go, you know what, I don't want this anymore?
Yeah. Do you know what? All of a sudden, all of that external validation and competition to try and be the best just meant nothing to me.
Wow.
I was empty from it. So when I sort of realized, I didn't know when I did that last show that I was going to stop, but I probably knew from around 2016 that I didn't really want to do it anymore.
Okay.
Yeah, but I was still driven by these kind of this need to stay secure in this identity. Like, who am I without this? Or
so that's right in the middle of your professional career, isn't it? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. It was like this pressure to keep going because I'd won my first pro show. I'd got to the Olympia. You can't stop now. But the cracks were there for me. I wasn't enjoying it. The Olympia was not a nice experience for me, I have to say. Like I was stressed. I was overeating. It was not pleasant because my intentions were not aligned. It wasn't congruent for me when I was doing it. So I think for me, the fact that my health was suffering so badly towards the last year, and I was getting more side effects from the supplements that I was going to take. So I was getting more side effects than I had ever had the whole time I've been competing.
Negative.
Yeah. Okay. But because I was so stressed, because I was actually going against my internal voice. Intuition. Since 2016, I really didn't want to do it anymore, but because I ignored that, your body tells you no. Yeah. So a lot of the time, people that have injuries, people that get ill, you know, this is their bodies stopping them because they are not using their will and they're not listening to their inner voice or their intuition. So the body goes, we're not having that anymore. It takes you out of it to save you. So
did you feel as though when you made the decision to walk away then that you had to justify it to anybody, or were you saying, look, I've made the decision, I'm walking away, that's it, and I don't care what anyone says, I don't care what the industry says, anyone who calls you to do a guest spot or go and compete again, I'm not interested. So long as you were happy with yourself, you weren't bothered by anybody else. Is that right?
Yeah, no, I didn't care. I did that last show, and then I got home. It might have been a couple of evenings later, and I opened up a bottle of red wine and I poured a glass and I sat there and I was like, yeah, that's it, I'm done. And then I told Giles, my partner at the time, I said, I'm done. That's it, I'm done. And he was like, he was shocked like at first, but he was like obviously supportive of the decision.
Yeah.
But yeah, I wasn't bothered about what anyone else. I didn't feel like I had to justify or anything. I was ready to move into a different phase of my life.
Well, before we go on to the next...
Ronnie, sorry, before you move on, there is actually quite a lot of questions, and at the minute they're mostly directed at Rosie as a bodybuilder. So if we could just cover some of those off quickly, and then we'll get on to
that's where I was going to go with bodybuilding, because I want to go on to the next stage.
Yeah,
so
let's see
bodybuilding. Go on, Matt, throw them up.
Okay, so this is again from Sarah Oldham, and obviously bearing in mind the journey that you've been on, your advice might be different to kind of what she's expecting, but she's asking, what one piece of crucial advice would you give to someone who either already competes or is thinking of competing for the first time?
Yeah, so it's funny because this is what I've always said, actually, and I would still stay true to this, because even though I've had this experience and I'm kind of on the other side and I'm looking back with hindsight at maybe some of the questionable reasons behind why I was doing it and all these different things, like, I'm not here to tell people not to do it. Like, I had an incredible journey, an incredible experience. I wouldn't take it back. So how can I now say to anyone on the other side, oh, don't do that because of A, B, and C? It's like everybody's going to have their own journey and their own growth from it. But I would always say patience. Like, one of the things that I think that allowed me to be so successful, even though everything was kind of flowed for me, like I won a lot of competitions with what I did. What I think one of the big things was I was patient. So I did it for 15 years and I chose what I wanted and have like this big vision of what you want to achieve. But then I knew that it was going to take, I always knew it would take something like 10 years to get there. Bodybuilding, it's not like, maybe if you're already very fit and then you do a bikini show, okay, that's a little bit different. You might be able to kind of bring your goals into fruition within, say, 3 years or whatever it is. But I think that people often in bodybuilding rush it and they want to look the way that the people on social media look, or they want to look like the pros. They want to have the leanness, they want to have the muscle density, but it isn't possible. So then what I see is a lot of people putting pressure on themselves, doing silly things with substances, relying on fat burners, relying on substances to create faster results, or feeling like putting themselves down if they don't win the first show. You know, so I would say really like patience, get some goals in place, realistic goals for you with your genetic structure, with the muscle that you have right now. So really figure it out. Like, how many years is it going to take to gain the pounds of muscle that you need to stand on stage and actually be able to diet down and still have muscle to be competitive? Or are you even doing it to win? Like I was always very, right, I'm going to win, I'm going to do this, I'm going to be a pro. Maybe you are someone that has a very wide waist and you are never going to have the sort of shape that is going to stand on the Olympia. Like it's okay to kind of be realistic with what you're doing and what you're setting out to do. Yeah, so just kind of like setting realistic goals and then find out like the science behind bodybuilding. Get really into science and figure this stuff out. Don't just kind of like hope for the best and think that you should look like these incredible pros within like 1, 2, 3 years. Doesn't happen like that.
Any other questions, Matt?
Yeah, that's good advice, Rosie. The next one is from Agatha. She's got quite a lot of questions, so let's just, it might actually cover your face off, so let's just have a look at it first. So she's, first of all, she's asked about diet hacks to make prep more sustainable and avoid any food cravings. So let's just tackle that one first, if you've got any specific advice.
Yeah, so I used to gosh, it seems like another life ago for me now. But I did use. Yeah, I know, it seems so crazy, but I used to do things like, excuse me, I used to have a lot of like lemon squeezed in water. So I used to do that a lot. I used to have, I used to make my own chocolate. So you can get something called Suma. It's like the brand is Suma and it's creamed coconut. And then you put like organic cacao powder and a little bit of honey. And you can make like your own healthy Nutella spread. But because it's like very high in fats, but it's all good fats, of course, it like curbs the cravings as well. So it fills you up. To be honest, I used to be just like a bit of a nightmare. I used to always have to have something to eat every hour. I would be like having the sugar-free jellies. I would have a Diet Coke. I would be, I needed something little the whole time.
Okay, let's have a look at next then. So she says, your daily routine when on prep. So
I was quite fortunate, I guess, especially when I turned pro, that I didn't have to work much. So I didn't have like a 9-to-5 job, say. So I used to be able to get up. I used to get up. Sometimes like when you're on strict prep, like you tend to not sleep much, actually. So sometimes I might wake up at like 4 a.m, like absolutely wired, and I would go straight to the gym. I used to put on the same piece of music that Bring Me the Horizon track. I think it's called Happy or something like that, but it's like really aggressive. So I used to listen to that and I'd go and do my cardio. So I would do Stairmaster for like 40 minutes, followed by 100 walking lunges. I'll never forget that, never. And then I used to go home, or actually I would sit in the changing room and I would eat my 40 gram of porridge so slowly, like I would savor every tiny little bit of porridge. Then go home. Sometimes I would have a little nap. So I was like super fortunate that I got to recover and nap and all this kind of thing. Then I used to go to the gym a few hours later and I would do my weight training. And I would spend lots of time just in the gym because I used to feel like it kept me in the zone. It kept me motivated. It kept me focused. So sometimes I would stay and have 3 hours for my training session because I would do my warm up, my mobility. I would do my actual workout. And then I used to spend time with my foam roller, stretching, all of this kind of thing. But that was more like when I was a pro, like I kind of just took it to that level where it was life was bodybuilding. And then I would do more cardio later. So I'd go home, I might get another nap, more food, and then I would sometimes do cardio at about 10 o'clock at night.
Wow.
Intense, isn't it?
One of the questions from Rachel, she's asked, how important is mobility? You just touched on it there.
Yeah.
And she said, when is it best to do this if you're training five times a week? And that's from Rachel. So what would you
so important?
Yeah.
So important. I wish it was so silly, because I'd come from a background of dancing, so I was mega flexible, and then I somehow just kind of stopped doing it when I started bodybuilding. But then I kind of paid the price, because I got myself measured. I can't remember now. It was something like after bodybuilding for 10 years, and I'd lost an inch in height because my spine had been compressed, and because all of the muscles had tightened around the hips and around the lats. So I then had to spend nearly 2 years releasing all of that. So flexibility and mobility is so important. It's so important for muscle growth, to make sure that you've got the oxygen and the blood flow going around the body the way it needs to. Also, if you've got any restrictions or mobility issues, it's going to impact your range of motion when you train. It's going to impact the function. So when you try and go down and do your squat, but you've got like tight glutes or tight lower back or tight hamstrings, it's going to flip your pelvis and your knees out of alignment. You're probably going to end up with an arched back and knees rolling over your feet. So if you want to actually grow a beautiful, symmetrical, balanced physique, really important to do, I would say, like a routine for every single session. So instead of feeling like you've got to find more time to dedicate, like a separate day or something, I would just start to have 15 minutes at the beginning of every workout doing mobility and activating certain muscles that need activating. For example, getting the scapula ready if you're going to be doing any pressing movements, or if you're doing any lat movements, any back movements, do some mobility work around the chest so that all of your muscles around here are open, so that when you go into doing your dumbbell row, for example, you can get a full range of motion instead of getting to there and then getting stuck and doing this kind of thing.
Yeah.
So definitely specific mobility exercises and activation exercises depending on what you're training. And then at the end of every session, starting to stretch. And you can even implement it in your rest. So if you don't have a lot of time, if you've only got this 1 hour every day, once you've finished that body part, start to stretch that in between your sets whilst you're doing your next body part.
Yeah.
Or you can introduce some static holds, which are in that kind of eccentric position where you are now loading but stretching as well. So, but really important and massively going to avoid injuries.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me just select a couple more out. We won't have chances because we want to get on to your new business and new. So another one just from Agatha. I think it's poignant because you said yourself, Rosie, that you would shit yourself backstage. You were nervous, full of nerves and everything. So one of the questions from Agatha was, and your advice on how to boost confidence before going on stage. Now, I know Agatha, and she lets herself down. She's got a great physique, but her presentation is often from stress and worry. She won't smile enough, and she's she just doesn't present herself as good as she could do. So, what advice would you give to somebody who is feeling a little bit nervous?
Yeah, I would really say that this kind of mental and emotional conditioning work, whether it's to do with science-based hypnotherapy or cognitive behavioral therapy, NLP, these kinds of things, because you can't just, if you've got doubts about yourself that are kind of ingrained, and this is a pattern, a repetition, it's quite likely that those inner voices, that inner critic, happens quite a lot. So the voice that says you're not good enough, you're not going to win, that probably happens on a daily basis many times. So what we have to do is over the whole year start to condition the subconscious programs and create a new voice that supports the goals that we have in place. Daily affirmations, they sound like woo-woo, and it sounds like what the hell's a daily affirmation going to do? But it's reprogramming the subconscious, and it's creating what we call dendrites. It's these dendrites in the brain. So whenever we do anything repetition, whether it's like, we know if you want to build a bicep, you have to repeat that exercise again and again and again, over repetition, to create that growth. It's the same with the brain. It's the same with the thought patterns that we have. So we have to create new thought patterns. And there is an element of like fake it till you make it when it comes to these daily affirmations. Yeah. So if we, and it's not just about saying things, you have to connect to it on a feeling level, and you have to do like the reframing and the reprogramming work where we actually look back at other times when we have had success. And yeah, just like this is really important, I think. And anything like posing, if it's something like that freaks you out on the day, it's like doing that repetitively as well, so that you have got all those basics covered, so that on the day there's not going to be as many things that you're kind of fearful about. And also like checking in with, what is the fear? Why are you getting scared? What is the fear? So like for me freaking out, the deeper fear would have been to lose. And what does that mean? Well, that would have been a dent in my self-esteem that I didn't know was already a little bit shaky. So we kind of look at, well, what is the actual fear? And then you can do different, there's something called Socratic questioning. And this is where we look at anxiety and we look at like catastrophic thinking. And there's just this way of questioning things that soothes you and makes you realize that actually the thing that we perceive as a threat doesn't exist. It just doesn't exist. So there's all these different methods you can use.
Brilliant. Now, we're coming towards, we're not far off the end of our interview, but I mean, what I want to do is bring you up to where we are now with you. I mean, you were doing a lot of coaching as well, and that's something that you now don't want to do anymore, or you don't like doing it anymore. And in 2019, you basically relaunched yourself, reborn into doing therapy. And I know you've touched on that throughout some of your explanations about where you were at with yourself, and that's where I was going with earlier on. And it seemed to be it was already there within you, but you didn't quite find it until now, and you didn't know what was going on with yourself until 2019, when you basically sort of got yourself into therapy. So tell me, when I say into therapy, you doing therapy, not So tell me about that. What you're focusing on things that were all different. So tell me what we're doing now and what our sort of next journey is for you.
So I guess the whole therapy thing for me started around about 2016, because I mentioned earlier that I had the binge eating throughout bodybuilding, and I stumbled upon something called NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, and I studied it myself. I didn't get a coach or anything. I studied it and I put it into practice, and within 6 weeks I had stopped a 10-year binge eating pattern.
Wow.
So I was like, wow, there's something to this. So I actually went away and studied in 2016 to become an NLP practitioner, but I didn't use it for anything really after that. Like I kind of used it with my bodybuilding clients, but I probably didn't really know. It was more of like a self-development thing. It was more of like I was on my own healing path and figuring out my own stuff before I could even think about, okay, now how do I guide other people and support other people?
Yeah.
So from 2016 until 2019, I was kind of studying and doing all these different things and using them on myself. And then with Claire McGrath, my best friend, and she was also an IFBB fitness competitor. And we both stopped bodybuilding and highly parallel paths, so similar. And we launched this business, Yo-Yo-om. And this is, down below, you can see, yoyo-om.com. So, yeah, we spent the first lockdown creating this incredible business where we now provide different therapies for people that are struggling with mental, emotional, physical issues. So people that might be experiencing problems with low self-esteem, anxiety, problems with food, addictions, issues in their relationships, different patterns, any sort of patterns that are going on in someone's life and limiting them. This is the kind of coaching that we provide to allow other people to get to know themselves and to maybe see some of these kind of faulty subconscious programs and then start to build up from a new kind of more authentic, empowered version of themselves and start to connect to their inner voice, their intuition, and start to really define what it is they really want, not from a survival, protection, fear-based place, not from these kind of survival coping mechanisms that we learn when we go through the socialization process when we're children, but from now this grown-up adult place. Who am I? What do I want? And then from there, start to create really healthy boundaries, physical, emotional, energetic. And just start to allow people to move closer to what it is they really want.
So, Rosie, Sarah has asked a question which I think might be potentially a good question to ask right now, because I believe it sits right in with you, so you might be able to use this as an example. And she's talking about a client, I think, and she's saying that she's very conscious that gym goers, especially women, have started to associate food and exercise as being good or bad. And so she's quoted, "I was bad today as I had some chocolate," or "I was good as I did some extra cardio." So she's asking, what advice can you give her to be able to help them get out of that mindset?
Yeah, well, it's really important that we get away from using labels like that for the way we eat, like good, bad. And when we say we're kind of on the wagon or we're off the wagon. So it's like taking away the wagon. Let's just get rid of it. And then if you have some slightly different food, it's not, because I think what can happen is people, if they class a food as being good or bad, the minute they have even a tiny little bit, it can go into like this spiral downwards where they feel ashamed, embarrassed, guilty, and then maybe go into like binge eating like I did. But it's a very tricky thing. It's a tricky thing because bodybuilding, the reality is you have to eat a certain way to get lean enough to step on stage. Like if you're going to be a bodybuilder, I think it's a little bit different when it comes to things like figure and bikini. I think you could have a diet that would be much more balanced. And even when I used to do bodybuilding coaching, I used to make sure that as many of my girls would keep their monthly cycle. So it is possible to kind of get down to these levels and win shows and still be reasonably balanced, but bodybuilding isn't balanced. It just isn't. So if, for me personally now, if I were to see someone that I was working with was showing signs of unhealthy attachments to certain foods or unhealthy attachments to tracking, having really obsessive, rigid approaches to food and exercise, I would be asking them, I wouldn't want to coach them for a start. I would want to ask them to perhaps think about stepping away from actual bodybuilding if that was starting to happen. And I guess that's me now personally from a therapeutic perspective. It's probably a little bit more on that side.
So Rosie, what kind of clients are the majority, or what type of person are the majority of your clients at the minute? Yeah. Is it Gen Pop now? Is it recovering bodybuilders? I don't know. What is the...
Yeah, it's a really wide variety, actually. I work with men, I work with women. Some have competed in the past and we're kind of working through body image issues. Also, I work with a lot of people that have had or still struggling with things like bulimia, binge eating, these kinds of things. Working with people that are struggling with the way they communicate in their relationships with their partner, husband, wife. So I work with so many different things. It could be around confidence, self-esteem. It can be around addiction with food, alcohol, these kinds of things, or just helping people that want to feel a little bit better and healthier. It's really, really varied.
So I've got one question myself then. So would you say that competitive bodybuilding, and that's from a bikini category or even a men's physique, the kind of entry level categories, right up to the more muscular ones of female bodybuilding or male bodybuilding, would you say they're a catalyst for what's the right word to use? If you put the wrong person into these people who've already got issues, is that a catalyst to make these things worse?
Yeah, definitely. And there's a lot of people that already have kind of issues around their bodies and around food that go into bodybuilding because of that, because it's a way of controlling things. A lot of people that kind of have issues with the body image and around food, they have big control issues. So when you come into bodybuilding, it almost masks the issues because they get to be obsessive. They get to kind of control things to the extreme. And yeah, it's kind of important. I wouldn't work with someone that displayed those kinds of traits if I was a bodybuilding coach, knowing what I know now, not judging anyone who's kind of doing that now, because you only know what you know, don't you? You can only kind of do the best with what you know at any time. But I would say that what can happen is a lot of competitors go into competing that have these kind of issues, maybe secretly as well. And then maybe they have a coach that doesn't know about it, or they don't know how to handle it. And you might have a coach that's kind of a little bit more do or die attitude, like get on with it. If you really want it, if you really wanted it, then you do all that it takes, this kind of thing. And this kind of leads to, it kind of compounds the issue for that kind of person that's struggling a little bit with maybe binging or falling off the diet and this kind of thing. And then what that does is it adds shame and embarrassment and feelings like they're not good enough, like there's something wrong with them. Why can't I get that lean? Why can't I diet? Why am I not disciplined? Yeah, so it's kind of really important for coaches to be aware of it and maybe just step aside and just say, if you want to compete, go compete, but maybe not with me as your coach.
Okay.
Rosie, I know you've got several programs on your yoyo-om.com. There's 3 that's currently up there now. Food is not the issue is one of them, and intuitive eating is the other, and detox with a difference. So I would imagine what you've talked about there is incorporated in those sort of 3 subjects that you've got there. So I would imagine if anybody needs any further help and advice from what you've already been talking so wonderfully about tonight, and I think it's opened an awful lot of people's minds, I would imagine, with the actual thought process of what we've just finished on. So I would suggest you go to yoyo-om.com and get more information on that. And I would imagine that it's probably not just a one-hit wonder. I would imagine that you would have people come to you over a period of time via Zoom and all that sort of stuff. Because obviously, I would imagine you would speak to people all over the country. I would imagine.
Yeah, I tend to work with my clients for a minimum of 3 months. And connect by video every single week and just share all the different tools and practices that I have in document form, video, audio, and just giving that real solid sort of support as well. And I think one of the things that my clients say is that the space I hold is so non-judgmental. I've experienced so many different things. Like I've been an absolute wild child in my past, binge eating. I've done some crazy things. So when people come to me, it's just this space where it's like, oh yeah, I get it's normal. I get it. Exactly.
Well, Rosanna, it's been absolutely superb to listen to you. I've listened to every word that you said. I've hung on every word because what you've been through and what you've done is going to bring lots and lots of help and advice to people going forward. I'm absolutely convinced of that. And for people who know you, I think they're just going to say, well done, and what a great interview that was.
Thank you so much. I've really, really enjoyed speaking to you. So thank you for asking me to come on. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. It's been great.
So it's yoyo-om.com for any further information. Rosanna Harte, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Rosie, don't go anywhere. Stay there for a second. We're just going to take you off the screen and we're just going to finish off and we'll come and chat to you in the green room.
Okay, cool.
Okay, all right. See you in a minute.
Wow.
That was epic, wasn't it?
Matt, when you said that we were going to have Rosanna on, I know her obviously as the bodybuilder. Really, really interesting when you actually take all the sort of the facade of a very, very successful bodybuilder down, and you hear what she's gone through, the self-doubt, the binging, all the things. I'm not worthy, I'm not good enough. I've heard that time and time and time again in the bodybuilding. All the interviews that I've done backstage, every time it gets it all the time. I was always looking at everybody else. They look bigger, they look this, that, and they never look at themselves. And they look at everybody else's strengths, and they don't look and they don't look at their own strengths, and they just focus on their weaknesses. And that came across as well, what you done. But going forward with yoyo-om.com, the stuff that you were saying and what you can do is just going to be amazing. And I think people who have listened to this tonight and listened to what she's got to say would be encouraged to pick the phone up or to make contact with her, even if it's to sort of reassure them where they're going in the right direction. And you know, the point about the coaches of what they're doing, you know, work hard and all that sort of stuff, and no pain, no gain. It's not always the way, is it really?
Oh, definitely not. And you know, I think the reason I wanted to bring Rosie on was for that journey. You could have made a movie out of that journey. And you know, it's so interesting to kind of see it from the, you know, the top, and a complete reversal, and doing something really, really good on the other side, which was, I think, is an really important thing, because as Rosanna, I get used to calling her Rosie. So yeah, pointed out that the bodybuilding, you know, isn't healthy. You know, when you take those extremities, it's not healthy. She's come out of that now, and she's doing something that's healthy. And I think, as a coach myself, I try to look at the healthiest way possible to do things and take on exactly what Rosie said, as an influencer. And again, there's a lot of people that get into the sport. One, you know, she mentioned that they come into the sport with issues themselves, and then the catalyst makes things worse. I forgot what I was going to say, the second point, but I think that there's a really good opportunity there for people when they find out that they have got an issue and potentially bodybuilding's no longer for them. So they come into the sport, they think it's what they want, and then they find out that it's not, and then they come out, and I think trying to find another avenue of still staying fit and healthy is still something that we should be doing to lengthen our life, stay healthy, fit for longer. So that's why it's key to get Rosie on and really talk about some of the health benefits as well.
I think the other thing as well, which is quite interesting about dealing with all your demons, irrespective of whether you're a bodybuilder or not.
Yeah.
And finding out, the daily affirmations, which are really, really important. And, we say very glibly, see it, believe it, and achieve it. And that's literally what it is. You've got to be able to see what your inhibitions are, find out and change that mindset and coach yourself back to being positive again. But listen, I'm not the expert, but I get everything from what she said there. Really, really interesting. So what I would say to everybody out there, go to yoyo-om.com and get in touch with Rosie. So
definitely,
mate, that's been great, and we'll probably see everybody next time for our 14th edition.
Yeah, wicked. All right, cheers for hosting. I'll see you soon.
See you soon.
All right, take care, everybody. Bye.
Bye.